All right, welcome in Powers on Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, down in Tampa. Appreciate you finding us on your podcast platform. If you've not already done so, hit that subscribe button to the podcast. That way you'll get each and every episode of the Powers on Sports Podcast dropped right to your phone each week in your podcast platform, whether it's Google, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is, Stitcher. We appreciate you finding us on the podcast. We are in early, getting about the middle of July. We're during the All-Star Week break here. A pretty slow sports week on the field, but there's plenty of news off the field that we're going to get into on this episode. No guests this week. I'm gonna talk about some of the news headlines of the week. We're gonna take a little break, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about the Northwestern hazing scandal, as well as the saga that's going on at West Virginia with one Bob Huggins and his alleged resignation that wasn't a resignation, that maybe still is a resignation. So we're going to get into those topics. Plenty of good stuff to talk about this week. Again, a lot of stuff off the court. We're going to talk a little MLB All-Star game, a little trade deadline here as we have this little dead week here for the MLB, which will be getting kicked off again on Friday, which Friday this week. They'll be back off the All-Star break. Trade deadline is August 1st. We got about 2.5 weeks to go on that. You will see some moves here in the next probably 10 days or so. Again, the big question around the league is what will happen to Shohei Ohtani? Will he get traded? Will the Angels not trade him? Who could be interested in potentially trading for him? Some teams are starting to emerge as possible suitors if the Angels decide to trade him. I think if you know he's not re-signing, I think you do have to trade him, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit. So just a couple programming notes, reminder, we'll be hosting a couple of more podcasts as we get into the football season. I'll be hosting the No Quarter Given podcast, which is kind of a Tampa Bay Buccaneers centric podcast with my co-host Peter Blake down here in the Tampa Bay area. So that'll be starting up here real soon as training camp gets going in the NFL, 1st of August or so. I'm also going to be hosting the college football Coast to Coast, part of the Coast to Coast podcast network, the Florida Football Insiders, where I'll be kind of focusing on all the things in the state of Florida relative to college football. So that'll be coming back here in the fall as well. So lots of opportunity to hear some good content. I also co-host a radio show on Wednesdays called The Press Box. You can find all of our episodes, pressboxradio.com. It's an online radio show. Got stations all throughout the Southeast, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, a little bit in so if you're involved in the radio business and you're looking for a great little show, our show typically runs 8 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday mornings Eastern time. I'm a part of the broadcast on Wednesdays with host Mike Grace. He does a great job getting guests, big-time guests from all over the country. We talk a lot of college football, a lot of SEC, news of the day kind of stuff. So it's a really good radio show there. So if you're looking for some good sports radio in the morning, check us out, pressboxradio.com. So again, lots of stuff going on. Let's get to first things first. Let's get to Victor Wembanyama. He made his debut last week in Summer League out in Vegas. He played 2 games. First game was not real good. Second game, he played much better. And of course, in pure Greg Popovich, San Antonio Spurs mode, they shut him down after 2 games. So he played his last game on Sunday. Had 27 points, 12 rebounds. Good second game. Didn't play very well in the first game. Scoring wise, he did some good things on the court, blocked some shots, things like that. But game 2 was much better than game 1. So that's the end of Wembanyama in the summer leagues. We won't see him again until the NBA season gets going. LeBron James made the proclamation that we all knew that he was coming back at the ESPY Awards, like we didn't know he was coming back. So that was pretty, I didn't like how he did that at the ESPYs, the way he did it. Like there was any chance in hell that he wasn't coming back. But LeBron James confirms he will be back in the NBA for another year. Again, Lakers did a good job in the offseason fortifying their team, re-signing some guys, bringing in some other guys. Still waiting on news of Damian Lillard, James Harden saga, where those guys going to end up as we progress through the summer. That probably will drag on here for a little bit and such. So that's kind of your NBA news and notes. Some NFL stuff. Jets have been selected for Hard Knocks. You're going to see them on HBO here coming up here real soon. Remember, they start their training camp in the next week or so because they're part of the Hall of Fame game, I believe. So they're going to be playing that first game. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Rodgers and Saleh and all these guys. Quinnen Williams for the Jets just signed a new big extension, the defensive tackle. So he just signed a huge new extension for the Jets. Look for the Jets to restructure Rodgers' contract here because he's got a humongous $100 million cap hit or something next year. So they'll restructure his deal, I'm sure, to get him extended out and make the salary cap a little bit less. Other things, Saquon Barkley's talking about if he doesn't get his franchise deal done by Monday, which is Monday the 17th, which is the deadline for all franchise tag guys to sign a new long-term contract, he might hold out. That dude ain't holding out nothing. He ain't foregoing $600,000-$700,000 a week. If he doesn't get a new deal, he's not doing that. I know he's talking like he's going to sit out games. No way in hell Saquon Barkley is sitting out games and foregoing $600,000, especially in a depressed running back market where you're not going to get humongous paydays like some of these other positions. So that ain't happening. He can say all the bluster he wants. We'll see if the Giants and he can get a deal done by Monday the 17th. But if they don't, he doesn't have to report to training camp, and he probably won't. But he will not be sitting out games. You can book that as well. How about the huge story coming out of ESPN, Don Van Natta, the huge Snyder and John Gruden and Goodell story about the emails being leaked relative to John Gruden being fired by the Raiders. Very interesting read if you want to get on ESPN.com, Don Van Natta, about the whole Snyder emails and how that led to the demise of Snyder with the Commanders having to sell the team. Talking about all the intertwining, the contentiousness between Goodell and Gruden. They couldn't stand each other. Gruden obviously had some very harsh comments off the record about Goodell, some very rough comments about DeMaurice Smith, who was the head of the Players Association at the time, who's just left that job. So Gruden suing the NFL. For those of you that don't know, Gruden is back here in Tampa from all indications, suing the NFL big time for defamation, because again, he's the only guy that's getting hammered by all these emails, and apparently there's hundreds of thousands of emails by lots of different people, and he's the only guy that kind of have any repercussions. So from that perspective, I can understand Gruden's position. Of suing the NFL. Nobody else got in trouble. No other executives, coaches, owners, nothing. Only Gruden lost his job. He did get most of his money from the Raiders that they owed him, but he's suing the NFL, and it's going to get ugly before it gets pretty. So check out that article, ESPN.com, about the whole demise of the Commanders and inside the Gruden email scandal as well. So only other couple of signings of note that we're still waiting on. Where will Dalvin Cook go? Where will DeAndre Hopkins go? Who knows if they'll sign in training camp? They'll probably at some point sign mid-training camp, I would guess. Those guys are veterans. They don't want to have to go through all the training camp, so it wouldn't shock me if they sign after probably the first preseason game somewhere mid-August to give them 2.5, 3 weeks to get ready for the regular season. So those are your news and notes from the NFL as well. MLB All-Star Game was in Seattle on Tuesday night. Awesome home run Monday night home run derby ended up between Arozarena and Vlad Guerrero Jr. Guerrero Jr. beats Arozarena in the finals. Julio Rodriguez, 41 home runs in the first round, the Seattle guy. So that was good to see for the Seattle crowd. But yeah, the game itself, pretty good game, 3-2 final. National League breaks the streak of 11 straight years of losing in the All-Star game. Hideous uniforms, by the way, both sides. Terrible. I don't know what MLB's thinking. Horrendous uniforms. You have to put the team's logo, either whether it's a dark uniform or a light uniform. You have to put the guy's logo, what team he's on, and all that stuff. But it's just a bad look by MLB with the uniforms for the players. I don't know what, again, that's probably a pure money grab, I'm sure, by Nike, whoever was paying, however much they paid for the uniforms to be what they were, but terrible look by MLB with the uniforms. National League wins 3-2, eighth inning game-winning homer by, I believe it was Elias Gonzalez. I think he's the catcher for Diaz. I He's the catcher for the Colorado Rockies. Hits a 2-run homer in the ninth, or in the eighth, excuse me, and the National League goes on to win 3-2 for the first time in 11 years, which will lead into the second half of the season with the last 70 games or so for most everybody will start on this weekend, Friday. You got the Rays, you got Baltimore, you got the NL Central winner, the AL Central leader. That's going to be a hodgepodge. And then out west, you got the Rangers and Houston are battling it out. What will Anaheim do with Ohtani? It's my contention they need to trade him. They're probably, unless they make a run here in the next 2 weeks to get within a couple of, because I think they're 5 games out of the third wild card. Remember, Trout's going to be out for another 6 weeks or so, broken hand. Rendon's hurt. Ohtani, we don't know when he's going to pitch again. He's okay to hit, but he's had a finger issue, so we'll see when he pitches again. But if you're the Angels in another 8 or 10 days and you're 6-7 games out and you haven't made him move, you have to trade Ohtani. You cannot let him walk for nothing. All indications say he's not going to re-sign with the Angels. You have to get a haul for him, and there are teams out there will give a haul. Couple teams to be on the lookout for: the Yankees, and I'm going to tell you right now, the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays have the minor league talent. They have the depth in their minor league system to do it. They have a guy or two on their major league roster they could give up. It's going to be a pure 2-month rental. But if you're Stu Sternberg in Tampa, you want a new stadium, you think you've got this is the best team they've ever had from top to bottom. First time they've ever led the AL East at the All-Star break. This is your chance to go for it if you're Stu Sternberg. You want to win over the community in Tampa, you go for it. You go make a trade for Ohtani. You go win a World Series, and you'll have a new stadium by Christmas. That deal will get done quickly if you go win the World Series with Shohei Ohtani. Showing the community that you're willing to go for it and spend some money. The return on your investment will be tremendous at the gates. You will have huge crowds at the Trop the last 2 months of the year with Ohtani. You will then fortify your roster even more so. You'll keep them away from the Yankees potentially, who's another team that's probably going to make a run at Ohtani at the trade deadline. The team if I'm the Angels, you cannot trade Ohtani to the Dodgers. You cannot do that in the regular season. If he walks and goes and signs with them in the offseason, nothing you can do about that. But you cannot trade him to the team 20 miles down the street in L.A. to the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers go on a big run in the playoffs, and you're sitting there holding the bag if you're the Angels. I know the Dodgers probably have some good players, prospects to give, but you cannot, from a PR perspective, trade Ohtani to the Dodgers if you're Artie Moreno. Trade him east to Tampa Bay, maybe even a team like Texas, maybe the Yankees. But you cannot trade him to the Dodgers. But again, I think a dark horse in this race is going to be Shohei Ohtani to Tampa Bay, because I think they got players, they got the wherewithal, and they've got a winning team. And Stu Sternberg's got some motivation to put a championship level team on the field come September. And they got a chance to do that with Shohei Ohtani. The other part of this trade deadline is going to be interesting. Who's going to be the first team to strike and go get somebody, whether it's Giolito, the St. Louis Cardinal guys, the Cubs trade Stroman, do the Mets unload players? What do they do? Do they go for it, or they unload guys? What do the Padres do? Things like that will be very interesting. And what teams, like the Reds, like maybe Cleveland, does Bieber get traded? Which team makes the first big move? Who goes and gets Giolito? Who goes and gets a guy like Lance Lynn? Who goes and gets a batter, a hitter? But again, who's going to make the first move before the trade deadline? I'm not talking about 2 or 3 days. I'm talking about the next week. Who's going to be the first team to make a move and say, we're going for it? Again, I think Tampa Bay could be in the Ohtani sweepstakes. If they decide to trade him, if the Angels don't trade him and get nothing for him and he walks, you deserve what you get. Artie Moreno and the Angels. Remember, Bryce Harper left the Nationals and they got nothing. They didn't let that happen with Juan Soto. They got a haul for Juan Soto, and they can get a haul for Shohei Ohtani. You can probably get 3 big-time minor league prospects and at least 1 major league guy ready to play now, maybe even 2, if you want to trade Ohtani. I think that's what the Angels should do. They should make him 1 more huge offer before the deadline. If he declines it, then you got to trade him. You can't let the guy walk out the door for nothing. An all-time great is having an unbelievable MVP type season. I know it'll hurt you at the box office the last 2 months of the season at the gates, but you can't let the guy walk out. Your team's not winning. They're going to stop coming when your team is way out of it, out in Anaheim. make a move. Tampa Bay, go get Shohei Ohtani. But I think it's going to be Yankees and Rays are going to be the two teams most in the hit hunt for Shohei Ohtani. So there's your baseball. Couple soccer notes, and I'll give you some Wimbledon notes. First of all, Wimbledon. Let's do Wimbledon. Women's final is set for Saturday. Ons Jabeur came back and beat Sabalenka on Thursday. Tremendous match. Jabeur was in deep trouble in the second set. She made an unbelievable comeback in the second set, wins it in 3 sets over Sabalenka. She's going to be playing Vondrousova, who's the first unseeded player in 60-plus years since Billie Jean King, women-wise, to make it to the Wimbledon final as an unseeded woman. Her and Jabeur in the final on Saturday, and then Sunday, we'll see what happens in the semifinals on Friday. You could have a potential Alcaraz-Djokovic final on Sunday morning, breakfast at Wimbledon, which would be tremendous for TV. Hopefully, maybe we'll get that. You got, I think it's Joker and Sinner, and then Alcaraz is playing. I don't have it right in front of me, but you might have an Alcaraz Joker final. Remember, Joker's going for the Grand Slam. He's halfway there. If he wins this Wimbledon, he'll be going to New York City to complete the Grand Slam. How awesome would that be if that was a possibility? But hopefully we get an Alcaraz Djokovic final on Sunday in Wimbledon. That'd be pretty cool. So last thing before we take a break, take a little commercial break, and then we'll get to the Northwestern and West Virginia drama. Is Messi has arrived in Miami. He is in Miami. You're probably going to see him play in the next 10, 12 days, somewhere around mid to late July. Miami's got a couple of home games coming up. Inter Miami FC. Definitely check out if you want all things Messi. Go to see my guy's podcast and his online content at the Heron Outlet. My guy Ian Hess down in Miami covers Inter Miami FC. All great things, all the things you need to know about Messi. Go to the Heron Outlet for all things Messi. You'll probably see a big press conference here in the next couple of days. Also, Christian Pulisic has been transferred to AC Milan, going to Italy from Chelsea. So that's a good move for him. He'll get some opportunity to play, I think, more than he was going to play at Chelsea. And the Gold Cup final is on Sunday in Los Angeles. You got Mexico and Panama. Panama knocking out the United States in penalty kicks in the semifinals. Mexico beating Jamaica on midweek here, but leading to the final on Sunday. So disappointing for the U.S. is not in the final against Panama, but it's Panama, Mexico in the final in LA on Sunday night of the Gold Cup. So that's your soccer headlines. Appreciate you finding us. Again, you can find me on Twitter at JPO Sports on Twitter. Love to hear some feedback. Remember, tell your friends about the podcast. We talk all things, whatever's going on, man. We talk whatever's going on, news of the day on this podcast. This week's headlines we hit NFL, hockey, whatever it is, baseball, free agency stuff, soccer. We talk Wimbledon, whatever's going on in the week of is what we talk about here on the Powers on Sports podcast. Got a good guest for you next week, Annie Sabo. She's a media member out of Cincinnati. We're going to be talking about the Reds, her career. Her father was an MLB player, and her husband is a PGA Tour player. So we're going to get into all those great things with Annie Sabo next week on the podcast as well. So you'll enjoy that. So we'll be right back in just a minute or a couple minutes as we're going to talk Northwestern hazing scandal and Bob Huggins DUI coaching situation at West Virginia. So we'll be back in just a minute or so. But before we get to those things, I want to give you a couple of words from our sponsors. Titan Home Lending. If you are in the market for a new home and anywhere in the state of Florida, Titan Home Lending can get you finance. If you're looking for financing for a, again, FHA, conventional VA, if you've been following the news, the housing market is interesting housing market going on right now. Interest rates are rising a little bit. So if you're in the market and can afford to, and you're looking to buy, don't keep waiting because the rates might, who knows what the rates are going to do, but the odds of them going down dramatically are not great. So I would suggest if you want to get approved, if you're looking for a house, second home, investment property, townhouse, condo, act. If you are in a position to act, get out looking, because get financed. You don't want to be looking for a house without a pre-approval. Reach out to Titan Home Lending. You can reach out to me, 205-790-1404. We can get you financed and approved in one day. Doesn't take very long to do. Need a few documents from you to figure out how much house you can afford. You don't want to be shopping for a house that you can't afford. So reach out to me again. Anywhere in the state of Florida, Key West, Orlando, Pensacola, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, anywhere in between that you want to buy a home, buy a piece of property. You can also refinance. If you're going through a marital situation, you can refinance your home if you need to get one of the spouses off the mortgage and all that kind of good stuff. So reach out to me, Titan Home Lending, Jason Powers, 205-790-1404. Want to give a shout out to our realtor partner, Star Alvarado. She's your realtor anywhere in the Tampa Bay area. If you need help selling or buying a home, reach out to Star Alvarado, 813-538-9572. She does a great job. She can sell your house. She can help you on the house hunt as well. Her and I are partners. We work together on some things, on some opportunities. So you will get a great realtor if you're looking for a realtor anywhere in the Tampa Bay area, Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, Pasco County, Polk County, all in between. You can reach out to Star Alvarado, 813-538-9572. Last and not least, we want to give a shout out to our guy, Todd Tedesco. He owns Print and Marketing Solutions. It's a print services company here in Tampa. Everything from road signs to anything, signs, banners, things you might need for a corporate outing, for your business, signage for your business, color, brochures, all those kind of things. My guy, Todd Tedesco, 813-498-2887. He can fit all of your printing needs, corporate needs. Again, he does a ton of corporate stuff. He does golf events. He does, banquets, all those kind of things. So reach out to my guy, Todd Tedesco, and tell him the Powers on Sports podcast sent you. So again, if you have an interest in sponsoring the podcast as well, reach out to me as well, 205-790-1404, or on Twitter at JPO Sports. We'll make it very worthwhile for you and your company. The podcast is worldwide. We have lots of listeners all over the Southeast, state of Florida, Tampa, all over the country. So if you sell products all over the country, if you are an online business, we'd love to help you. I've got many outlets that I can broadcast your company and advertise for you. Got my YouTube channel, Jason Powers Sports Channel, just went over 1,000 subscribers. So there's a lot of traffic and content there. All the video interviews that you hear on the podcast go up there as well, so you can see it all. So definitely reach out to me if you have any interest in being a sponsor of the podcast. We'll definitely make it worth your while to do that. So again, appreciate you finding us. Let's get back to the podcast and let's get to the hazing scandal at Northwestern, which eventually led to the demise of Pat Fitzgerald, the longtime head coach at Northwestern, the guy that's been there, built that program, was a player there back in the 90s when they went to the Rose Bowl, miracle run to the Rose Bowl back in the 90s with Fitzgerald and Gary Barnett. Fitzgerald's been the coach there, I think 15, 16 years, something like that. There was a investigation that happened earlier in the year. There were some hazing allegations. Northwestern hired a firm to do an investigation, did a 4 or 5 month investigation. They presented their results to Northwestern, and Northwestern, in a shady, I didn't like how they handled this at all, issued Fitzgerald a 2-week suspension at kind of the quietest 2 weeks of the year, which I didn't like that one bit. If you're going to suspend the guy, you got to have a little teeth into the suspension, and suspending a football coach in the middle of July does nothing. These guys, this is the quietest time of the year for them from a recruiting perspective, no practicing. It was just like a slap on the wrist. Kudos to the Northwestern University student newspaper. They really dug deep into this, and they found some former players that were willing to talk about on the record about stuff that was happening, to confirm allegations, to give details. And this story really blew up when the Northwestern student newspaper, again, if you're the university, you have a tremendous journalism program. You had to know the student newspaper was going to dive into this matter immensely, even more, as much or more so than the law firm did, to find out the real details of what was going on. They found some details. They got some allegations. The reports on both sides acknowledged that there was some hazing going on, but the deniability was by Fitzgerald that he knew nothing about it. His staff knew nothing about it. I find that very hard to believe from a guy that played college football. like I did, for not one assistant coach, not one equipment manager, not one trainer, not one support staff member to know, to hear rumblings, to hear people talking, to hear guys talking after practice in the locker room, in the hallways about stuff that was going on. I find that very hard to believe. Again, Fitzgerald taking the plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. Somebody on that coaching staff knew. Coaches, support staff, trainers, equipment guys, and it was their job to tell Fitzgerald. And if they didn't do it, shame on them. Again, the investigation was over numerous years. So again, different assistant coaches came in and out of there. I get it. But somebody in that football coaching staff knew. And I know the way these coaching staffs meet, whether it's 4 or 5 times a week, staff meetings, somebody should have said something to Fitzgerald. He should have known. Again, whether he deserved to be fired, that's but for him to say he knew nothing about it, I have a hard time believing. That's the part where it's going to get him fired, is when you go to the hilt that you don't know anything about it. Fitzgerald was fired early in the week. This week, he's owed about $40 million. He is obviously going to be suing the university. The university dropped the ball here with only issuing a 2-game suspension. Had they issued a 2-week suspension and then maybe a 1 or 2 week suspension during the regular season, maybe this goes away. I don't know. But with a week, and it was 2-week suspension at this time of the year, bad PR by Northwestern University. And then it came out that the baseball programs had a significant investigation going on surrounding their baseball coach, who has just been fired on Thursday of this week. So they've had 2 hazing scandals at the same time. Baseball coach was fired. Now the football coach was fired. The AD and the president did a lousy job how they communicated that to the team. Apparently the president didn't take any questions from the players. The AD did a Zoom meeting, wasn't even there in person. I know he was out of town on vacation, but did a Zoom meeting. He and the president did a Zoom meeting, didn't take questions, which was horrific and terrible. The public outcry was they had to fire all the coaches. You can't fire the whole staff with 2 weeks left until the season starts. First of all, Fitzgerald brought in 5 or 6 brand new assistants this year that had nothing to do with the hazing. And second of all, you can't fire the whole football staff. You got to have a football coaching staff in 2 weeks. Nobody would have taken that job on 2 weeks' notice as far as putting together a football team and a football staff for this year. So you can't fire the entire staff. The defensive coordinator, who's one of the new coaches, has been appointed to be the interim coach for this year. The whole staff will be gone in 4 months come November, but you couldn't fire the whole staff now. You had to keep a staff in place for this team, knowing that training camp's starting in 2 weeks or so. So the defensive coordinator is going to be the interim coach. This will be a short-term deal. Obviously, none of these guys will be back. They'll clean house come November. It'll be interesting to see what kind of candidate pool they'll get. I think they'll get a good pool. Northwestern's you're in that conference, the Big Ten conference, where you get a huge check every year. Northwestern has been competitive over the years. They can recruit some players. I think that'll be a job. You will see some demand as far as that job, and there'll be some long-term security with whoever gets that job as well to clean up that program. So be interesting to see how many of the Northwestern guys transfer. They do have the ability to transfer in the next 30 days if they choose to, because the coach got fired. That's a special rule in the NCAAs. They can do that. So it'll be interesting to see how many guys transfer here in the next couple of weeks to other places. So that's the Northwestern scandal. Again, you'll see there'll be some litigation. They're going to fight over how much they got to pay Fitzgerald. The university is going to try to not pay him because they're going to try to say they fired him with cause. Fitzgerald's going to try to get his money because he's going to say, well, you suspended me for 2 weeks and then you turn around and fire me 2 days later. That ain't right. So he'll probably get at least half his money. They owe about $40 million. They'll probably settle at 20, 25 million, something like that. And you'll probably see Pat Fitzgerald. He'll get another job. It may not be next year, but he'll get another job within 18 months at the latest. He's a good coach. He'll get a job in college football again, no doubt, in my view, if not an NFL job. So the other scandal is at Morgantown in West Virginia. Bob Huggins, if you remember, was got a DUI, his second DUI. probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. He then resigned a couple of days later, allegedly. Now Huggins is trying to say that his wife signed a resignation letter, that he didn't sign it, that he didn't resign, and he wants his job back, and he wants Bob Huggins. It's time for you to go away, bub. It's time for you to get the hell out of there. You've had a great run as a coach, but you've had too many scandals in the last couple of years at West Virginia. Drinking scandals. There's been a notorious history of your drinking. You made some very off-color comments on a radio show, homophobic comments on a radio show 2 months ago, where you got docked a huge amount of money from your salary. You can't. You ain't coming back to West Virginia in no circumstance. If I'm in West Virginia, it doesn't owe you a penny. 2 DUIs, terrible off the court annex as the coach. You're out. It's time to go. Go retire. If somebody else is willing to hire you, God bless America. But you should not get another penny from West Virginia University, and I don't think you will. You're done. You've had your run. You've had a good career. Go off into the sunset, either in the media or whatever, but you're done at West Virginia. I know you played there and you got a lot of history there. You're done. You shouldn't even be trying to get your job back. You've embarrassed that university too many times. And here's what I'd say to you, Bob. If one of your players had 2 DUIs and said what he said on the radio in an interview, would he have any chance of returning to West Virginia? The answer is hell no. If that one of your players did that, you have no business being back at West Virginia, Bob Huggins. Time to go. Again, great coach. You've had a great career. Go. In West Virginia, don't pay that guy a dime. You have all the cards. You have all the leverage here. Don't pay that guy a dime. So there you have it. Bob Huggins, time to go. Northwestern going through some major drama. Again, we gave you all the updates. Again, appreciate you finding us. Check out, again, Powers on Sports podcast. Tell a friend about us. We're going to have all kind of football stuff coming up. We're going to have a huge August full of previews, whether it's college, the NFL, divisional previews. We're going to have some big guests. I got some big guests on the hook here. Hopefully we'll have them in August. Again, Annie Sabo will be joining us next week. She does pre and post game for the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to be talking the Reds. We're going to be talking her media career. She's got some very interesting things in her career. Who she's married to is very interesting. The family she grew up with is very interesting. So you're going to really like Annie Sabo. She actually worked down here in the Tampa Bay area on local TV for a couple of years as well. So there's a Tampa connection as well. But again, we're gonna talk all things Cincinnati Reds next week as well. So you'll enjoy that chat. I got an NFL coach potentially joining us here in a couple of weeks. Again, we're gonna have media people talking college football conferences, previews, NFL divisional previews. We're gonna have some great guests for you moving throughout the training camp and the football season. So appreciate you finding us, Powers on Sports podcast. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. Have a great weekend. Do something nice for somebody. Be nice to people. And we'll see you next time on the Powers on Sports podcast. Have a great weekend.